Amazing, amazing. This is like a reunion. I saw so many people I recognized immediately from last year's awakening event. And now we're back all over again, and it's like family. It's like coming to visit family. And one of the things I love about being in the UK, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, I love the sincerity of the people. I love the way that people treat myself and Elizabeth. You treat us with respect and dignity, and I really, truly do appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's just like another vibe out here. I mean, it really is another vibe. You know, I've traveled the world quite a bit. I've experienced people from all over the place, and I have to honestly say, I feel very comfortable here, extremely comfortable. So thank you. Now, last year during my presentation, I wanted to talk a lot about Mars anomalies after I talked about Atlantis and the pyramid and so forth, and I didn't get a chance to really show you guys all of my anomalies because we ran out of time, if you remember, if you were here last year. So this time, I have my presentation set up to where I can get to the Mars anomalies. I want to show you guys some incredible things that you've probably never seen before. There may be 3 or 4 or 5 slides that overlap from last year when I tried to rush through them at the end of the presentation. But I really want to be able to take my time and go through and show you guys evidence of life, not 20 million light years away, not 10 million light years away, not some exoplanet in a distant galaxy or distant solar system, but right above our heads, there could potentially be life happening right now, and also remnants of ancient civilizations that link to the ancient cultures that I talk about all the time on Earth. Mars is called the god of war for a reason. It's because it definitely had an intricate part in the ancient civilization aspect of our reality many, many eons ago. All right, so without further ado, I want to get this party started. This is really nice. I like the way they did this. Now, before we get going, of course, Forbidden Knowledge TV is the sponsor of this Awakening Expo event this year. So if you don't have Forbidden Knowledge TV, this is the QR code. We would love for everyone to take a 7-day free trial of our TV network, okay? You can subscribe. There's over 3,000 episodes of content, including great documentaries, movies, TV series, and even lectures like the one we have here. This entire lecture series from all this entire weekend will be on Forbidden Knowledge TV. So if you ever want to go back and watch these again, if you ever want to have a friend or a family member watch these lectures from this weekend, you'll be able to watch it exclusively on Forbidden Knowledge TV. And of course, we have the Black Knight Satellite documentary, which is an award-winning documentary in 2022. It won Independent Film of the Year. So all that's on Forbidden Knowledge TV and so much, much more. Even Nick Pope has an amazing TV series called After Contact. Season 1 and Season 2 are on Forbidden Knowledge TV. It's one of our most highly produced pieces of content to date. Very high budget, Mr. Nick. This is a great series. But he deserved it. And also thank you to Melissa Tittle for helping to produce that series. But again, 7-day free trial. See, I learned my lesson before. You have to get your shameless plugs out of the way in the beginning of your presentation. Because if you don't, nobody will know what you do. Oops. Okay, got one more plug for you. We are helping to raise money for kids, underprivileged children. They're in America, but they are underprivileged. As the board of directors head always says, kids cannot decide where they're born, where they live, what part of the geographical location they're located on Earth, or how much money their parents have. And so the money we raise from this raffle will actually help kids get clothes in the winter, shoes when they need new shoes, a tutor, a mentor, whatever they need. This program helps them. And if you want to learn more about it, there's an entire presentation about this on our YouTube channel and on Forbidden Knowledge TV. But you can win a brand new Mercedes-Benz. Okay, so if you want to win a Mercedes AMG, you spend $44 on a ticket. The benefit is you're helping kids and you might win this beautiful car. All right? And of course, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, still a bestseller. Out of 3 million books in ancient civilizations, still #1 to date. So thank you so much for helping me maintain that #1 status. Number 2 is the living legend, Graham Hancock. So that's an honor. And of course, woke doesn't mean broke. My financial literacy book, which made the bestseller in the UK, is based on American-based economics, but I guess a lot of that applies here. And of course, Elizabeth's book, The Recipe to Elevated Consciousness. She wrote an incredible book that I saw so many of you thanking her for just yesterday during the autographs session. Thank you. If you want to get that book, it's on Amazon.com as well, and Amazon in the UK. And our social media platform, Unite the 99, we're creating, and well, we already created, we're building this platform to be one of the top social media platforms that exist, away from algorithms and suppression of information. All right, let's get started. So we're talking about cargo cults initially. What is a cargo cult? In my opinion, this entire civilization on this planet right now, currently, is a cargo cult. We're talking about a cult of people that literally were engaged by a more advanced people. So if you look at this image up here, this is in the South Pacific. These people now for many, many, many decades are still remembering the United States showing up to their islands, all right? These islands in the French Polynesia where we decided we wanted to go remove some people off of their island and then blow it up with a nuclear bomb so we can see what's going to happen, okay? So we went to where? We went to, of course, where the indigenous people lived and took them out of their land. But when we showed up on some of these islands, these airplanes came out of the sky. They'd never seen airplanes before. They had never seen weapons like guns, which you see them here. They never seen, you see these sticks, they've got bayonets, false bayonets, but actual bayonets at the end. They saw USA on the uniforms, and look at them. They've got USA on painted on their chest. They've got fake bayonets and weapons, all based off of when they saw the sky gods come down in these airplanes and bring them supplies and cans of Spam, which is a true story, cans of Spam. They became gods. Why? Because when a higher level civilization technologically engages a civilization that's got lower technology, the lower technology civilization will deify them. It's automatic. It's programmed into our DNA. You see here, look how their memories are so good. They even got the flag. This is another reason why, I mean, look at this airplane in the lower left corner that they put together from reeds and sticks to mimic what they saw come out of the sky. And they pray to this stuff. This is like worship, a complete cult, waiting for the sky gods to return with more Spam and more supplies. It's crazy. But when you look at what's happened on Earth, all of a sudden, it makes a lot of sense. When you see somebody recreate a flag like this in the middle of nowhere, you got to realize that when you see cave paintings of aliens, you got to take it serious. Because clearly they know what an airplane looks like. Clearly they know what a gun with a bayonet looks like. Clearly they know what a flag looks like. So when you see these people in these cave drawings or these petroglyphs are etching out and sketching out images that look alien, I believe them. Because I believe they're drawing what they saw. They're creating what they saw or what engaged them. Look at this, a satellite dish. Think about that. This is just from a tiny bit of influence from a civilization on the same planet. Imagine beings coming here from another planet that were 1 million years ahead of us technologically. What kind of influence would they have on us? Well, just look around. We went from a horse, buggy, and carriage 100 years ago to putting remote control cars on other planets. Think about that rate of speed of growth. Even with all the suppression and oppression of advanced technologies that we should be privy to, we're still advancing at an astronomical rate because we were engaged by beings from another planet. All right? Look at this. Anthropologists have invented or cultivated a number of important keywords, including culture, ethnicity, worldview, socialization, ethnography, and rite of passage. Among these terms is cargo cult, which, although more particular in scope, has enjoyed surprising popularity both inside the discipline and beyond. Peter Worsley, I'm staying at the Worsley Country Club right now. That's interesting. I guess it must be a relative of this guy. He probably bought the land way back then. who compiled an early overview of cargo cults in The Trumpet Shall Sound, 1957, offered what they had already become, which is the standard definition. So we talked about what the cargo cults are. When a more advanced civilization engages a less advanced civilization, the less advanced civilization is going to deify that more advanced civilization. Here's a short video clip. Let's take a look at this. So imagine sitting around for countless hours a day, looking up at the sky, waiting for another plane to show up to land on your artificial runway. I'm trying to impact into your mind how all the world religions came to be. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And the origins come out of the Emerald Tablets of the spirituality, which then later on, when people realized the power that was in these words, you can turn it into religion. You see, spirituality and religion are two separate things. People who think that they may go to a religious house to worship believe that it's spiritual. No, religion is here, spirituality is here. Two totally separate things are not one and the same. Spirituality, there are no rules. You have a direct connection with the divine. In a religious system, you have to go through clergy and so forth, a hierarchical system to get to the divine. It's two totally separate ways of looking at things, all right? But look at this. The history of the Emerald Tablets translated in the following pages is strange and beyond the belief of modern scientists. Their antiquity is stupendous, dating back some 36,000 years BC. So we're talking about 38,000-year-old texts. The writer is Thoth, an Atlantean priest king who founded a colony in the ancient Egypt after the sinking of the mother country. He was the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, erroneously attributed to Cheops. In it, he incorporated his knowledge of the ancient wisdom and also securely secreted records and instruments of ancient Atlantis. You see, the people that came here in ancient times and engaged mankind, they were the Anunnaki, but that is a term that means from heaven came to earth. The civilization they built was the Atlantean civilization. You see, Atlantean is a civilization name. The people were the Anunnaki. This is recorded in ancient texts. For some 16,000 years, he ruled the ancient race of Egypt. So we're talking about Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. Here he has on on that image here. You guys are going backwards and forward, okay. Well, anyway, in the image you saw in my book, he had on the head of a beak, a helmet of a beak, but that really isn't his real face. He doesn't really have a bird face. He has a human face or a humanoid type of a face. But what's interesting is this guy ruled for 16,000 years, according to the ancient Egyptians, one person. And that's not the only time in history we've heard of these lifetimes of ruling. We know that in the Sumerian kings list, some kings ruled over earth for 28,800 years, 14,000 years, 8,000 years. One person ruling for thousands and thousands of years. That's just the time they ruled. What about the time they lived? Think about that for a minute. We're talking about a record of people that were here on this planet that had enormous and immense lifespans and had advanced technology that engaged mankind and altered us forever. Those with, for 16,000 years, he ruled over the land of Egypt. From approximately 52,000 BC to 36,000 BC, at that time, the ancient barbarous race among which he and his followers had settled had been raised to a high degree of civilization. So he raised up the land of Kemet before it was called Egypt. Egypt is a fairly new name. That's a Greek name. Before it was Egypt, it was called Kemet. He raised them up to a high level of civilization. He ushered in a golden age in the land of Kemet after the Great Flood, according to the Emerald Tablets. Thoth was an immortal. That is, he had conquered death, passing only when he willed, and even then, not through death. His vast wisdom made him ruler over the various Atlantean colonies, including the ones in South and Central America. More evidence here again in text that Atlantis was not just a ring city sitting in the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantis was a global civilization. More than that, it was an interplanetary civilization. I'm going to show you some evidence of that tonight, okay? So the ring city itself was one capital of dozens of capitals that existed on this planet. Because if you read the Emerald Tablets, Thoth says, after we raised Kemet to a high level, he told his crew that he brought there with him in a ship that descended from the sky to go around the planet and duplicate what we did here. He said, duplicate what we did in the land of Kemet. And that's why no matter where you go on earth, you will find similar construction techniques with megalithic stone, pyramids, and so forth, right? Temples all over the place. Why? Because there was one master blueprint and they copied it and took it all around the world. It says here, When the time came for him to leave Egypt, he created and erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance to the great halls of Amenti, placing in it his records and appointed guards for his secrets from among the highest of his people. In later times, the descendants of these people, the guards, they became the pyramid priests, by which Thoth was deified as the god of wisdom. You see, he was deified. Now, what's interesting is when Thoth, in the beginning of the Emerald Tablets, he comes across human beings. He then shows them what he's capable of. They grovel at his feet. He says, stop, stand up. Basically saying, I'm not a god. Don't worship me. He said, I'm a son of Atlantis, and I'm here to raise you back up to a high level of civilization. Which is why I have so much respect for this ancient person, because he actually did not want to masquerade as a god like some of his relatives did. Enki and Lil and so forth. Some of these people took on, oh yeah, I'm God, worship me, Amun-Ra. But he said, no, I'm a son of Atlantis. I'm here to help you. You see, so people always ask, are there good aliens and bad aliens? Yes, some are good, some are bad, just like there's good humans and bad humans. Good and evil permeate the entire universe. And one thing I found through going through biblical studies, I'm going to go here to the next slide, is there are records of UFOs in the Bible, okay? Now, of course, I can't list them all here and talk about them all here all at once, but there are descriptions of UFOs described in the Bible. And so, keep it in mind, I say, Bible translators as far back as the 1600s described what they thought were flying vehicles. They didn't use the words as we use today because those words didn't actually exist. But I'm describing here what is in the Bible. There are 70 verses which describe clouds as vehicles, 15 verses which describe pillars, 10 describing dwellings, 160 verses on lights and fire as vehicles. There are 17 verses describing spinning wheels, 22 verses describing dark and shining objects. There are 37 verses of various objects in the Bible described as UFOs, and they are flying furnaces, burning bushes, eagles' wings, smokes, stars, and other objects that the ancient authors used to describe the fleet of the vehicles of the Elohim. The fleet of the vehicle of the Elohim. The Elohim is a plural term. In the Bible, it means gods, plural with an S. You see, in the Bible, where you see the word God, singular, there's a little bit of a mistake that happened by accident on purpose. They forgot the S. If you go back and translate the words back into Aramaic and even further back, you discover that the word is actually gods. In all these ancient scriptures and papyruses that they took from all these caves as they began to culminate this into a canonized book, I'm talking about the Council of Nicaea who did this, they began to erase the S when they copied and translated over the book because they wanted to usher in monotheism, a one-God religion, a one-God mindset. But these records had clearly stated that there were multiple gods, and some of that kind of escaped into the biblical text where it says, I am a jealous God. There'll be no other gods but me. Well, that's actually words from Amun-Ra, a.k.a. Marduk in the Bible in the Hebrew Torah. So those were his words. It's not the creator of the universe speaking. A lot of times we think it's the creator of the universe speaking in this book. It's not. It's these Anunnaki Atlantean people that are actually speaking. Virtually all religions believe in aliens, okay? Virtually all religions believe in aliens. What do I mean by that? If you look deep into the origins of religion, you'll find that they're all based on aliens, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at some of the evidence. Christianity, 2.1 billion people worship Jesus, right? And he said unto them, you are from beneath, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world, not from earth. If you look at the definition of alien, it means not from earth or from another country. Islam, 1.3 billion believe that the Prophet Muhammad was meditating in a cave of Hira by himself when the angel Jibreel, who said he was not from earth in the text, descended and came down to him and told him to recite the Iqra, which is the word of God. Again, not from earth, alien. Hinduism, 851 Hindus hold that the cosmos is populated by a numerous amount of deities and spiritual beings, gods and goddesses or divas, who actually influence the world, who interact with humans. Again, not from earth, alien. Buddhism, 375 million. Certain branches of the larger Buddhist tradition, including the Mahayana, include a variety of gods and goddesses not from earth. And of course, Mormons, 13.5 million people worship that. The angel Moroni, who was said he was not from earth in the text, is in Mormonism, excuse me, An angel that visited Joseph Smith on numerous occasions, beginning on September 21st, 1823. According to Smith, the angel was the guardian of the golden plates, which the Latter-day Saints believe were the source material for the Book of Mormon, buried in a hill near Smith's home. This angel named Moroni came out of the sky, met up with them, and showed them where to get these tablets from under the ground, and that's how they created the entire religion. But if you see the trend here, we're talking about being engaged by beings that are not from Earth. There's no text that I've read over the years now. I've read over 1,000 scriptures, papyruses, cylinder scrolls, books, biblical texts, all the Quran, everything I've read. Not one book is specifically talking about the creator of the universe. Now, there's several books that come pretty close, but they're not religious books or spiritual books. They are science books, quantum physics. Quantum physics is the closest thing I found to proving the existence of a God, which I believe does exist. I'm not an atheist. So I believe that we're living in a creation because the quantum physics and quantum mechanics formulas actually prove that we're living in a created universe. But there is no other text that exists outside of science that's really talking about the true, actual creator. We're talking about text authored by human beings with human hands. And actually, the problem with that is, if I go to the first person in this row and whisper in her ear and tell her to carry that story and whisper in the next ear, the next ear, the next ear, until it comes all the way back around to this gentleman here, by the time it gets to him and I go say, what did they say? What did I say? The story is going to be different. That's the problem. The story is not going to be the same. Why do I do the Emerald Tablets? Because it's one of the only texts that exists where the author was the actual person himself. Thoth authored them and wrote it himself. He didn't use a scribe. One thing you notice in all these other texts, there were scribes. There were people writing down stuff for other people, sometimes even hundreds, sometimes thousands of years after the events occurred. Like the Bible was written from 100 AD to 900 AD. Well, Jesus lived 2,000 years prior, so nobody was walking next to him going, say that one more time, Jesus? I'm just saying. And Jesus was a real person. He existed. His name wasn't Jesus. His name was Yeshua. That's his real name, Yeshua. When we go to Egypt, we take people to the place where he lived in Egypt, in Africa. Yes, Egypt is in Africa, in case you didn't know. Some people think it's in Arabia. No, it's in Africa. Jesus lived in Egypt, and the house and the bed that he slept in is still there till this very day. It's a shrine. Why was he there? At the age of 12, he disappears out of the Bible. Where does he go? Where does Jesus go? He disappears from the age of 12 to 32. He ends up in Egypt, which is located in Africa, and he ends up in there studying the Egyptian mysteries of who? Thoth the Atlantean. Where do I find this information? It's in the Gospel of the Holy 12. By accident, on purpose, left out of the biblical text. Just didn't make it in. We just couldn't put this in, guys. This kind of important information, we just couldn't put it in. He then goes to Tibet to learn Reiki healing, Qigong, energy moving through the body, chakras and all that good stuff, which was confirmed by the Dalai Lama. And then he moved down into India, where he learned the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back to Egypt. And then from there, the Bible picks up, I call my son, God is speaking. I call my son out of Egypt. And he shows up in Jerusalem riding on the back of a donkey at the age of 32. That's where the Bible picks back up the missing pieces, right? And so, yes, he was a real person, a real teacher. But I had this funny meme. Virtually all religions worship and believe in aliens, and it's a fact. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's an absolute fact. We're worshiping something that's not of this world, whether it's multidimensional, whether it is dimensional, it doesn't matter. This is a fact that we can't escape. Where do a lot of this information come from? The Enuma Elish and the 7 Tablets of Creation is one of the greatest texts that exist that we have access to. This text is located in the British Museum, and I've seen these tablets in person. You guys just happen to be in Britain, so you go check them out, okay? And they tell an incredible story of not only of the creation of our solar system, they tell an incredible story of the creation of Earth itself as an actual planet, which matches up with astrophysical data. It matches. How would they know how Earth formed that many millions of years ago? Where did that knowledge come from? How do they know about the separation of waters from waters, how the asteroid belt was formed and everything else that exists in our solar system? It's in these ancient tablets. It then goes into the point where there's actual people that are advanced beings that find a way to get to Earth to create a breakaway civilization. Can you imagine writing in cuneiform? Let me go to that page. Can you imagine writing in cuneiform tablets, which takes a lot of time to do, as you can see, using a tiny wooden stylus and etching it into wet clay, and then letting it bake or dry, and just coming up with a sci-fi story like that? You know, I just want to I want to write a story about aliens coming and, building a city here on Earth. Somebody just cracks out a wet piece of clay and starts digging into it. I don't think that happened. What I think happened was these people were writing down exactly what they were told and what they saw. This is probably as close as you're going to get to any actual truth that exists on this planet, which is why I dig into these ancient tablets like there's nobody's business. And guess what? Every single person in here can read these tablets now. You don't need to be an expert in translation, because these tablets were translated long before Zecharia Sitchin was even born. Zecharia Sitchin didn't translate any of these tablets, as the conspiracy goes. He was a great researcher, and in his books, he quoted these tablets and many others. He never said he translated anything. These were translated in the 1800s, long before he even was born. So what does that mean? This text is ancient. Not only that, you can go to the UCLA, CDLI online cuneiform digital library, and you can get all the stone tablets off the virtual shelf and drop them into the translator and read it all for yourself. You don't even need me anymore. And that's online. UCLA, CDLI, Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative. Say that fast 10 times and see if you can hang, okay? So let's move into the pyramids a little bit before we get into these images. The Great Pyramid is encoded with super advanced knowledge, pi, phi, and so many other incredible mathematical formulas, advanced knowledge. So when you look into these pyramids, it's a time capsule. It's a time capsule that's describing and telling us, for the age we're living in now, who was here in ancient times and how advanced they were. Because at the time that this information was encoded into the pyramid, which I'm going to go over real quick, I did a little bit of it last year, nobody at the time could even conceive or understand anything that was being encoded. They couldn't even understand basic mathematics. Most people were actually illiterate back then. Most people were illiterate. And if you were just a worker person, a person that had to go, work in the fields or work for your master, which is what happened back then as well. I mean, slavery is ancient. Slavery is not nothing new. Well, you wouldn't even walk around with clothes on in ancient Egypt because they wanted to make sure you weren't stealing anything from the pharaoh. So people didn't have any idea of this advanced mathematical knowledge. They were just trying to survive day by day, literally. Who built the Great Pyramid? Thoth built the Great Pyramid. Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. He says, build it out of the Great Pyramid, patterned after Earth's force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. And it has remained through these ages. It hasn't gone down yet. It's solid. In it, I builded my knowledge of magic science, which means advanced technology, so that it might be here when I return from Amenti. Amenti is the halls where he goes to send his bodies to rejuvenate, while he transfers his consciousness, according to him, into another body to walk amongst men unlike a man. Interesting stuff to write in 38,000-year-old text. His soul roaming will be free to incarnate and dwell amongst men in one form or another. This guy claims to have had advanced technology, which I believe the Serapeum in Saqqara, Egypt, is his father's halls of Amenti. Has anybody here been to the Serapeum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Serapeum, an amazing sight to see. Underground, underneath the sands of Giza, there is a huge chamber that goes on for about a half a mile, and it's carved perfectly out of the stone, and it has these alcoves, these halls going all the way down, and each hall has a 60, 70-ton sarcophagus, but it's not really a sarcophagus. It's a stone box that has never had a body in it. Each one is perfectly clean and pristine, and you can climb inside of them if you give the priest a couple dollars. He'll let you climb inside of one. But just to give you an idea how big they are, I'm 6'4". When I stand inside of them, my head is beneath the top of the box. The box is taller than me from the inside. So when I get inside, the box is up here. I've got to climb all the way back out again. The lids weigh 30, 40 tons each. But if you check the ancient texts, in some way they were technological They could not have been moved into those alcoves. They had to be manifested there or teleported there because there's no way to fit anything that large and navigate it through those thin halls to get them into those spots. It's an incredible sight to see. If you ever have a chance to go to Egypt, we're going again in a few more weeks. Mohammed Ibrahim is here actually today as well. He's speaking this weekend. He's one of our main guides, and I'll be speaking there as well. We take 70 people every single year down to Egypt to see these amazing sights. So here I am inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid and standing out in front. This is a really old picture. But that box right there that I'm standing in front of, that box is not a sarcophagus, as they would want to teach you and tell you. That box that I'm standing there with my hand on, my right hand is on that box is the same exact dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. And that's what used to sit inside of that box. The story of Moses is not exactly what the biblical text has told you. When you really dig into the tablets, you can kind of piece together a much bigger and broader story. It appears from my personal hypothesis, I will say, that Pharaoh Akhenaten most likely was closer to the actual Moses. He was ushering in monotheism, a one-God religion. He was worshiping Aten, the sun disk, also known as Amun-Ra, who told him to go around and deface every statue in the kingdom because I'm the only God and I'm a jealous God. Sound familiar? That's in the Bible. They copied it right into the Bible. But anyway, the pyramid over time had broken slightly in terms of the amount of power it was generating. It's a power generator. They added this granite stone box later, and they put the Ark of the Covenant in it to make a finishing piece to continue to generate electricity. You can see the corner that's broken, that huge chunk. If you can see the far side of the room, there's a gigantic hole or indentation in the granite where that chunk of granite flew off and smashed into the wall because an enormous amount of power came through this box at one point, proving again energy inside this chamber. The energy would travel to the apex and go around. The obelisk would capture that wireless energy and transmit it to jets, which would then be transmitted through electrical cables so they can have light, gold electroplating, and everything else. It's ancient technology that we have here. This is ancient stuff. We had to plug this stuff in. My computer's got to be plugged in or it's going to die. Back then, they used wireless electricity. Here I am in the king's chamber again. So you can see that the speed of light in a vacuum is, right there, 299,792,458 meters per second. And the geographic coordinates for the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid is 299,792,458. What is that? How is that possible that this can be encoded? Why would the speed of light be encoded into the Great Pyramid? Now, people say, well, meters per second, we just discovered meters. No, actually not. We actually didn't just discover meters. Okay, let me show you why. If you go and look, you'll find that all of these school books are actually wrong and need to be corrected because we've actually known for a very long time about these stone tablets discovered with Proto-Sumerian cuneiform. Now, Sumerian is where? Mesopotamia, which is where now? Iraq. Guess where these Proto-Sumerian cuneiform tablets were discovered in the world? They were discovered in Mexico by the Pyramid of the Sun. What in the world are Sumerian tablets doing in Mexico? And these aren't the only ones. There were some Indian chief that was dug up from his burial chamber in America, and where we live over there, across the pond, right? Where he had Sumerian tablets in his pocket. Now, what's interesting about these tablets are, that's the ancient metric system. So the metric system is ancient. It's not new. Stop. What they taught you in school, you got to forget about it. Wipe your brain clean and start fresh. This is the original discovery of the metric system here, which came out of Mexico, which originated where? From Sumerian cuneiform tablets. This is why I study the tablets, because they're as close as you can possibly get to the accurate truth. You know how much Wikipedia doesn't like to post this kind of information? This has its own Wikipedia page, and they actually told the truth about this, which is kind of crazy. Wikipedia, they're kind of false, fake news a lot of times. You can't pass a college exam on Wikipedia. You can't. You do that, you're in trouble. So let's look at a couple of these measurements here, all right? One of the most amazing anomalies is right here on Earth, embedded constants that are in the Great Pyramid. You can calculate the tropical year or calendar year. The length of the base side is 9,131. pyramid inches measured at the mean socket level of 365.24 pyramid cubits. So what happens is when you actually measure the base of the pyramid, you actually come up with the 365 days in a year. You know how many days are actually in the year, okay? That's pretty crazy. The perimeter of the base divided by 100 equals 365 as well. You can calculate the tropical year. The length of the antechamber used as the diameter of the circle produces a circumference of 365, accurate to within 6 digits. The tropical year, the ratio of the length of the grand gallery to the solid diagonal of the king's chamber times 100 equals the number of days in a tropical year. They're trying to let us know this pyramid is also a calendar. And the sidereal year is the length of the antechamber of the king's chamber times pi. You get the length of a sidereal year, which is 116.26471 pyramid inches. All this is encoded into the construction and much, much more. I'm going to go over a few more real quick. Now, what this means is you need to have a sophisticated, for us, it would be a sophisticated computer. And then you would type into it, I want to put all these calculations into my construction. Boom, 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 boom. And then if you think everything you want your whole wish list is in this computer. And then you say, now spit out my blueprint so I can have my construction workers build it. That's what had to happen. We're talking about pre-thinking, advanced and foreknowledge before building, not just throwing blocks together. There wasn't a bunch of slaves building the pyramids, okay? Did human beings build the pyramids? Yes. Under the blueprint from these advanced Atlantean people. I mean, these people aren't going to go out there and get their hands dirty. They're going to teach, and there's many records of them teaching construction techniques to humans and us doing the work. And in Egypt, we even have the records of people getting broken bones and broken arms and broken legs, and payroll records have been discovered on Giza in these ancient temples and sites. We know that people actually got paid to work on the pyramids. So the pyramids were not, I repeat, were not built by slaves. The mean distance to the sun can be calculated. Half the length of the diagonal of the base times 10 to the 6th power is the average distance to the sun. Think about that for a minute. The mean distance to the sun, the height of the pyramid times 10 to the 9th power represents the mean radius of the Earth's orbit around the sun. So we can calculate the Earth's orbit around the sun and the distance of the Earth from that. This is crazy stuff. The sun's radius, twice the perimeter of the bottom of the granite coffer times 10 to the 8th is the sun's mean radius. And the Earth's polar radius, that means the radius from pole to pole, we can calculate that. The sacred cubit times 10 to the 7th power is the polar radius of the Earth. And Earth's polar radius, the pyramid embodies a scale ratio of 1 by 43,200. So that means if I took the Great Pyramid and I scaled it up 43,200 times, it will fit directly inside of the planet Earth, and each point will touch one part of the inside of the Earth. So the pyramid itself is a representation of the planet that we live on. It represents a sphere, not flat. So I want to get into some of these images real quick because we're running a little bit late. But one thing I want to talk about before I do that, anybody here familiar with Avebury? Okay, that's out here in the UK, right? This is an astonishing discovery. This is actually just a map, a geological survey map of Avebury in the UK. And what's really interesting is it perfectly matches with a place on Mars called Cydonia. Cydonia, which means Giza, which means Giza. It's pretty interesting, all right? So when you take that ordnance map that I showed you before and you take this image from NASA, or the European Space Agency actually, and you look at the area called Cydonia where the D&M pyramid is, that 5-sided pyramid, and the famous face on Mars and the other remnants up there in the corner, when you overlay it, all of a sudden, you get a perfect match down to the millimeter with all the anomalies. It matches perfectly. This is an overlay right here. So what happens is Avebury, that field where the mounds are, is a representation of this same field or this area in Cydonia on Mars. How in the world did they make that connection? And then when you go to Deir Allah in Jordan, you discover that the face on Mars can only be seen from the sky. Hardly anyone ever knew this even existed, that even existed. It's pretty crazy stuff, that face is a representation of the same one that they discovered on Mars as well. in the late 1970s. Now, we're going to look at this and we're going to the images next. So what's interesting is people say, well, where's these planets that these beings came from? Where's any evidence of any extra planets in our solar system? We have never heard of this before. Well, I mean, you can't trust the news too much, but there's a real astronomer that came on the news and said, hey, there's planets in our solar system that are there. He says even there's a solar system in our solar system. Let's listen to what he has to say.
12 VP 113, jokingly dubbed Biden. Get it? Corey Powell's editor-at-large for Discover Magazine in studio. How you doing, Corey?
VP Biden.
Right on.
There we go.
Correct on that. Two images show you. This is the arrow obviously pointing to it. But there are three dots on here. One is red, one is green, one is blue.
Right.
What's significant?
So this is the actual discovery image. Basically, two astronomers were looking one little patch of sky very, very far away, looking for exactly this kind of thing. Stars don't move. Planets or anything that's like a planet does. So this is color-coded. This is what they saw on different nights. They're looking for one thing moving. They color-coded it to show that all these stars are staying still. This thing is moving, and the way it's moving...
So this is just one...
It's one object, color-coded.
Is Pluto on this?
Pluto's in a whole different part of the sky.
So this is way out there.
This is way out there. This is more than twice as far away as Pluto.
Unbelievable. Why does this matter, Corey?
Well, there are two ways you can look at it. I think I look at it first of all as an exploration question. That we know where we are on Earth. We've mapped our planet. Our solar system is still terra incognita. It's full of surprises. This object is something that astronomers said shouldn't even be there. There's a whole other solar system beyond the planets that we know that are full of these things that are sort of planets, sort of comets. Some of them they call dwarf planets. That's what they're calling this one. What we're seeing is we're seeing our neighborhood. We're seeing what's around us. And then the second part is we're seeing where we came from.
Go back to the other image, you guys, and we'll show, because we're over here on the left, right?
That's right. So we're over here.
Okay.
There's
Pluto's out here.
Yeah.
And this thing called Maki is way out here.
That's right. So that's another dwarf planet. If you want to find out where VP 113 or Biden is located, keep walking about another 30 feet that way.
Wow. We can see that far.
And this is the closest it gets this time. When it really gets cooking, it's 15 times as far away as Pluto.
That's incredible.
It takes 4,300 years to go around the sun.
I don't know how you know that, but I trust you. What is a dwarf planet?
So a dwarf planet, the fact that you hear weird terms like that is actually scientists saying there are things out there we don't really understand. It's a dwarf planet is kind of a catch-all term for something. It's round like a planet. It sort of looks like a planet, but it doesn't orbit in a regular way like all the planets that we knew growing up.
Would this be part of our solar system?
So it's part of our solar system.
Would it be outside?
It's a whole new zone. They're calling it the inner Oort cloud. You don't really need to know that. All you need to know is there really are these two solar systems. There's the solar system with the classical planets, and then there's this whole other zone that we haven't explored. And now they're saying because of how this new dwarf planet moves, that there may actually be an even bigger planet, something bigger than the Earth.
I guess that's the point I was going to.
Okay, I think I made my point. There's a lot going on out there that you have no clue what it is. How many people have ever heard of the planet Ceres? C-E-R-E-S. Good. That is the planet right after Mars in our solar system. There's more fresh water on Ceres than there is on Earth. C-E-R-E-S. You have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then Ceres, and then the asteroid belt. That should be mainstream news nonstop. When we sent a mission past there with a probe, it took pictures of this planet a few years ago, and on the way towards it, the lights were on. And so they hurried up and tried to say, oh, it was just probably some ice particles. Then when we got to the backside, which would be the dark side, no sunlight at all, guess what? The lights were on. Then they tried to, we kind of figure out, we don't know what it could possibly be. Somehow the ice is glowing, maybe from radiation. No, people live there. That's what's going on. People are living up there. We keep trying to find planets that are 20 million and 30 million light years away and 7 million. Listen, let me tell you something. The people are living here are right above our heads. They're right above our heads. I talked about Atlantis being a civilization that was a ring city, but it also was a global civilization. When you analyze what happened to Atlantis, You begin to analyze what happened to Antarctica. The key to Atlantis lies in Antarctica because Antarctica was in a different position, and it used to be one of the other capitals of this planet where it was an Atlantean civilization. It's clear to see now that at some point we had a pole shift of the crust of the Earth. This is geological data. The Earth's crust, the tectonic plates, shifted and slipped. And when they slipped, Antarctica moved at a very rapid pace into the position it is now. And that caused a global flood, another global flood, which then destroyed what? Destroyed Atlantis and many of the other colonies that existed, coastal colonies that existed worldwide. Because when you move an entire continent at that rate of speed, you're talking about a global disaster. How do we know this? Well, as the animals are now being thawed out from the melting of the ice in Antarctica, and they keep cutting them open and checking them out, there's undigested food in their stomachs. Now, you tell me, as far as I know, if you feed an animal or even feed yourself, within a few hours, you're probably going to go to the bathroom and release that. So how can it be that hundreds of thousands of years later, these animals still have undigested food? That gives you an understanding of the rate of speed that they were frozen. They were flash frozen. When you move into a very cold region, very rapidly and very fast, the winds are going to continue to pick up at an astronomical speed. You're talking about a Category 5 hurricane in Florida, that would be like nothing. It's probably like a Category 20 hurricane. Probably one of the most powerful winds we've ever seen on the planet. And then you have the rushing water coming in to that cold region, freezing almost instantaneously. So you have now Antarctica. That's what happened to Antarctica. It was an Atlantean civilization, which is why there are megalithic pyramids there. One of them is, I think, 4 times larger than the one in Africa at Giza in Egypt. Imagine a pyramid 4 times larger than the one we call the Great Pyramid. That's not really the Great Pyramid. It's just one of many. And we can see the megalithic structures, the evidence of them all around the world, all the same building technique, no matter where you go on this planet. So we know that this culture was a global civilization. These are pyramids right off the coast of Cuba and Florida, underneath the water. That pyramid there, the larger one in the middle of those 3, is larger than the one in Egypt. Underneath the water, right off the coast. And still there right now, well known and well documented. So we're talking about, this is a book cover, by the way. I just love this book cover because when you look at the ancient texts and tablets, there's always these battles between human beings. Oh, the Anunnaki were all black. Oh, no, they were all white. Oh, no, they were all this, red. And no, No, this is what the Anunnaki were. When you read the text, the more ancient scriptures and texts and tablets you read, you discover that these people were multiracial people. They came from all over the place. They came from Sirius. They came from Orion. They came from Aldebaran. They came from Arcturus. They came from all these other areas in the Pleiades. They came from everywhere. And as they describe different instances of them in different places, they looked totally different. Their skin color was described as totally different. Their eyes and their hair was described as totally different, right? So it wasn't just one race of people that came to this planet. There were many races. And that would also explain why we have many races of people here on the planet, because these people put genetic markers on us. And that's why there's a 2% variance in our DNA that would have taken millions of years to occur. First of all, Neville Thompson, he just got an award for Space Anomaly Hunter of the Year at the Forbidden Conscious Awards in Miami, Florida. And his work is unparalleled in this field. But Cairo means the city of Mars. That's interesting that Cairo actually means the city of Mars when we find a lot of anomalies on Mars that resemble anomalies on Earth. This image is about 3 miles wide. That's not tiny. Can you imagine a face that big? You can only see it from space. This is a ziggurat image that I cleaned up, which is in a book by Mike Barra. It's a famous book. That ziggurat of Earth, the bottom, but the ziggurat at the top, that's from Mars. Now, it's a little bit pixelated because it's spread apart on the big screen. Maybe from that distance back there, you can clearly see that it's not just a pile of rocks here. This right here is definitely not a rock. It has geometry, it has shape, it has structure to it, and it doesn't match the surrounding terrain. We don't know what it is. This is pretty interesting. Again, a shape that we don't know what it is. It could kind of look like biological remains, or we don't know. Maybe it could be just a coincidence. Again, something that just appeared to be out of place. Another interesting carving here, what looks like a carving. I can't say that it is because I'm not there, but I can just tell you that it doesn't make any sense with the amount of detail that we find when we blow these things up. Interesting. Look at the top right. That's a pretty interesting rock. I mean, it kind of looks like those little aliens that they put out here in the lobby. I mean, it's pretty crazy that this will be up there. This is a pretty interesting rock again. A rock on top of a rock that has a strange-looking face on it. Could it just be a coincidence? It's possible. But a lot of these anomalies happen within less than a quarter of a mile range. We can find 50, 60 things that look like this in a very small area. Another amazing rock that has a lot of what looks like faces on it coming out of the mud. Are they faces? They're just very interesting. Look at this. I don't know, man. I wish I could find a rock like that on Earth. I just can't seem to find one. That doesn't appear to be a rock whatsoever. It appears to be created somehow by someone. This is a crazy anomaly to have right here. It's kind of blurry because it's really, really big, but I don't know. I don't know if that's a statue or it's just a very incredible human-looking rock. Here goes a structure that's partially dilapidated here on top of a hill. This is one of the most famous anomalies out there. You can clearly see that this is not a rock, that it's some type of a built structure at some point in the past. And this kind of almost looks like it could be used as maybe what we would call on Earth a weapon, or maybe it could be something else. It could be a piece of a tool or a broken piece of some device. This one is pretty famous. It was on Ancient Aliens. Martine Graney discovered this, one of our greatest anomaly hunters. You can clearly see the ornate engravings on it. And you can clearly see that it ain't a rock. I'm sorry, but that's not a rock. That's something else. It's laying on its side. It's got two things coming out of the bottom of it, maybe how it used to stand up on something. But to me, it kind of resembles maybe some type of a statue. Wow, so blurry because it's so huge. But again, another face out of the stone with a crown on top. That was kind of hard to see. Here's another face coming up out of the mud, more like a statue that was covered by mud, only the top of the head sticking out. Another thing on the side of a mountain that just didn't look like a rock. It kind of looks artificially made. It's just laying there. Doesn't match any of the surrounding terrain. More weird stuff here. I mean, if you look to the right side there, that one with something which looks like something on top of a head. It's just a weird design. Could those be rocks? Could those be carvings? Interesting. Another carved face out of a rock. Pretty interesting. You got Zeus over there. Something that looks like Zeus. What in the world is that doing carved onto that hill there? This one looks kind of scary. Look inside the mouth. There's something in the mouth. There's something inside the mouth, which is pretty crazy. It's got teeth, and it's got a little face inside the mouth itself. It's a really scary image. Maybe they have Halloween up there. I don't know. All right, look at this. This is a pyramid on the moon. This is actually a pyramid on the moon, a very famous pyramid on the moon. It's very easy to see, very clear to see the design. Other structures that have been found on the moon, large dome structures. All you do is take the contrast off of some of these images and you can begin to see things that have geometry to them that don't belong there. Another incredible face here that you can see on Mars. This face looks more African styled, which is pretty interesting. Another head, you can see I blew it up and kind of put it in the top so you can see clearly what it is. I mean, that's pretty strange. What kind of rock looks like that? It's kind of looks like Obama. Kind of looks like Obama to me. Here's another one. It kind of looks like an indigenous native from the Americas. What's interesting, like I said earlier, when I showed you that book image, these people weren't just one race of people, and you can see representations of all races in some of these Mars images, which is pretty interesting. According to the Ijiji, there was a civilization on Mars, and that's in the Enuma Elish, those stone tablets that I showed you earlier that are located right here in the British Museum. Say hi to your cousins. I don't know what these are, but they just don't look like rocks to me inside of this whatever that is. An interesting discovery I made years ago. These are blurry because sometimes you're zooming in from a quarter of a mile away. And of course, I try to obfuscate the images, but you can clearly see that there's something there that doesn't kind of match the stones. Look at the construction technique that's similar to Peru on Earth. You can see Mars, and then you can see Peru. It's the same exact construction technique. Why would that be? We're talking about an interplanetary civilization. We're not talking about a small group of people in a ring city. It's much bigger than that. And why would there be Ankhs? We found about 16 Ankhs laying on the surface of Mars. Why would there be Egyptian Ankhs on Mars like the ones we have here on Earth? Because again, the two civilizations were directly connected. There's another Ankh. I don't know if you can see it. It's so stretched out now that the screen is so huge. But right where that arrow's pointing, there's another Ankh there laying on the ground. Can you see it? That's crazy. What is that doing there? What is an Ankh doing on Mars? Look at this. That's a weird image. What is that doing there? All I did was just take the contrast off and expand it so you can see what it is a little bit clearer. But again, it doesn't match the surrounding rocks. And this is pretty interesting. The god of war. What is this doing on Mars? And we give the source images for everything. What is that doing there? Why would that be on Mars? Look at this. I discovered this years ago. Looks like a typical home with a gable roof, sitting out in the middle of the Martian desert with windows and all. Another structure here, clearly visible, sitting out in the middle of the desert, taken from the top. The image was taken from the top of a hill looking down. An ornate object, which is pretty interesting, discovered by Martine Graney. That's pretty ornate. Do you have rocks like this in your garden? I'm just asking for a friend. I've never seen a rock like this in the garden before. One of my very first discoveries. This is a Washington.edu official image from the University of Washington. And I found this image. It's called the Presidential Panorama, taken by Mars Pathfinder a very long time ago. And all we did was expand the images so you could see exactly what was there. Nothing was altered, nothing was changed. I call it a technology, what looks to be like a sphinx and more technology. I could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, those don't belong there. There's also something else that doesn't belong here, but I didn't want to categorize it. This object right here doesn't look like a rock either, but I didn't want to mess with it. This is pretty interesting. Look at this. That's on Mars, guys. All source images are always available on our Mars group on Facebook. We have 14 Mars groups. Another incredible image found by Linda McClendon on Mars. This is a pretty interesting image here. I don't know what this is, a grouping of rocks that look like people or just rocks. Could be. But they're pretty interesting. Look at this. Kind of looks like a deceased body. Look at this object. It's really massive. This was a big object. I don't know what it was, but if you can see, it has real geometry to it. Don't know exactly what it is, but It was just sitting there, and it wasn't, if you could see the full-size image, which I couldn't fit in here, it's not really touching the ground. And of course, we have the five-sided pyramid that's located at Cydonia, which I was talking about earlier. You can see the mathematics here. This isn't just wind blowing randomly to blow this thing into this shape. This is built by hands, highly sophisticated, knowledgeable hands. And this one here, another object that I discovered, I think this was is this McMurdo? It might be McMurdo Valley, years ago. You can see it off in the distance on the right. You can see that it has structure, that is standing up off the ground on some type of legs, that is some type of a built structure, that is not a rock. And one of the most famous ones, again, this image was analyzed by over 100 anomaly hunters, and every single one came back with the same exact conclusion, that we may be looking at 2 deceased people here on the surface of Mars, as there was a global catastrophe there that destroyed virtually almost everything. And we know this because the Mars equator is shifted to a 45-degree angle, and there was a pole shift of the crust and a global flood on Mars. Not only that, as I wrap up, there was a discovery on Mars. Xenon was discovered in the soil, and xenon was also discovered in the atmosphere in abundant amounts. What does that mean? Weapons-grade xenon is a direct result of nuclear weapons fire. That's what xenon does. And that's why Mars has that tint to it. You're looking at the results of a nuclear fallout from an ancient war that happened on Mars, and it happened between Earth, the moon, and Mars. It was an interplanetary war that the Atlanteans engaged in, that has been written about in many ancient texts, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis epic, and many, many, many more. So that concludes my discussion and talk for today. I hope you guys learned something. Thank you so much.
Mr. Billy Carson, get loud right now.
Thank you.